Welcome back, candidates, to this explainer, designed specifically for your International Welding Engineer exam preparation. Today, we're focusing on the strict, mathematically governed requirements for plastics welding. Now, as practicing engineers, you already know that joining polymers isn't just about melting two pieces of plastic together. It requires a really rigorous adherence to thermodynamic principles, procedural mechanics, and of course, international standards. So let's just dive right into it. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with material theory, move into the butt fusion sequence, tackle electrofusion principles, break down key welding parameters, and finally wrap up with the governing standards. All right, part 1, material theory and polymer weldability. There is an absolute, strict dividing line for our entire field of study here, and it all comes down to cross-linking. Consider thermoplastics, like polyethylene, polypropylene, or PVC. They are capable of reversible melting. When you heat them, their polymer chains basically slide past one another, allowing them to fuse, form really strong welds, and then harden again when they cool. Thermosetting plastics, on the other hand, think epoxy or phenolic resins, form permanent chemical crosslinks during their initial curing process. If you apply welding heat to a thermoset, it doesn't soften or melt. It literally just burns, cracks, or degrades. So, for your exam, you need to lock in this anchor idea. If a plastic cannot undergo reversible melting, it absolutely cannot be welded. Moving right along to section 2, the butt fusion sequence, which is really the mechanical execution you need to nail. The butt fusion process is arguably the practical centerpiece of your exam prep. This 4-stage sequence demands absolute precision. First up, we prepare and plane the surfaces to guarantee perfect meeting. Second, we heat the ends against a PTFE-coated plate under a very specific pressure to form that initial bead, and then we follow that with a non-pressurized heat soak to allow for deep thermal penetration. Third, we remove the heating plate, and fourth, we bring the pipe ends together to weld and cool under a designated joining pressure. A successful weld relies entirely on the operator's and your adherence to the pressure and timing profiles defined for these exact steps. Let's zero in on a critical variable in that sequence because it really builds our understanding of failure modes: changeover time. For example, isolate this exact term. Changeover time is the highly critical window during step 3, where atmospheric exposure directly threatens the required heat state of those polymer chains. You have mere seconds to remove the heating plate and bring the pipe ends together. If the ambient temperature is low, or honestly, even if there's just moderate airflow, that exposed molten layer begins to cool immediately. So, the crucial point here is understanding what happens if that changeover time is exceeded. Well, you induce what is known as cold fusion. This is a severe, heavily penalized defect, both on your exam and out in the field. Cold fusion is a catastrophic failure mode where the pipe surfaces simply press together without actually fusing the molecules. The polymer chains at the interface have just cooled way too much to entangle. So it creates a joint that might look totally fine visually, but possesses almost zero structural integrity. Okay, section 3, electrofusion principles, specifically resistive implants. Let's establish the technical definition right off the bat. Electrofusion is a resistive implant welding technique. Rather than applying an external hot plate, we utilize an integral electrical heating coil that's embedded right into the fitting itself, usually a socket coupler or maybe a tapping T. By trapping this conductive coil between the parts and applying a controlled, high electric current, we generate localized resistive heat. This melts the surrounding polymer, and as that polymer transitions into a melt state, it expands, which organically creates internal joint pressure. When you look at a typical cross-section from the DVS processing instructions, the internal mechanics are just brilliant. You've got the resistance wire seated right between the coupler and the pipe. When energized, that heated wire causes plastification of the surrounding polyethylene. Now, because the fitting itself is rigid, the physical expansion of this molten material gets trapped, and that generates the essential joining pressure between the pipe and the fitting. You don't need massive external hydraulic rams here. The thermodynamics of the expanding polymer volume provide the exact pressure required to forge the weld. But there's a catch. Relying on that internal expansion means your field setup has to be completely flawless. Meticulous preparation utilizing robust alignment clamps is mandatory here. And before we even reach that stage, scraping the oxidized layer off the pipe surface is an absolute requirement. Any ovality in the pipe or any slight misalignment creates excessive gaps. If there's a gap, the expanding melt simply flows into that void rather than building up the high internal pressure required to fuse those molecular chains. And no pressure means a failed weld, period. Let's get into section 4, key welding parameters. This is essentially your mathematical matrix. The Kiwa documentation outlines a few specific variables that you just have to memorize. Capital T1 is your heating plate temperature. Lowercase t1 represents heating time under pressure. T3 is that critical changeover time we discussed earlier. P2 is your welding pressure, and T4 is the welding and cooling time under pressure. You have to understand that adjusting the welding pressure P2 or the heating temperature T1 directly alters the flow of melted material and the ultimate weld displacement. If your pressure is too low, the melt flow is sluggish and cooling effects take over. But if it's too high, you might literally squeeze all the optimal molten material entirely out of the weld zone and into the bead. Furthermore, as engineers, you're expected to calculate system parameters based on actual operational environments. Based on standard temperature compensation calculations, at an ambient 20 degrees Celsius, our pressure rating factor is a perfect 1.0. But notice how elevated ambient temperatures rapidly degrade the tensile strength and pressure capacity of polyethylene pipes. By the time the conveyed fluid or ambient environment hits 60 degrees Celsius, the pressure rating reduction factor drops to 0.4. Think about what that means in practice. A pipe rated for 16 bars at 20 degrees can only safely handle a fraction of that pressure at 60 degrees. Your welding parameters and overall system designs must account for these thermodynamic realities. Finally, Section 5, Governing Standards and the Regulatory Framework. As a quick reference recap, lock these 3 codes into your memory for the exam. First, ISO 21307. This is the overarching global compliance standard for PE pipe welding in municipal water and gas distribution networks. Second, DVS 2207. This is the German industry standard, but it is heavily cited internationally for providing incredibly exact processing times, temperature guidelines, and equipment requirements. And third, ASTM F2620, which is the primary procedural standard for butt fusion of PE pipe utilized in North American compliance. Knowing exactly which standard applies to your project's jurisdiction is a core competency for any international welding engineer. To wrap things up, I want to leave you with this highly practical question. If subjected to a destructive hydrostatic pressure test, will your specified fusion parameters cause the pipeline to yield before the joint fails? Because ultimately, your entire goal as a welding engineer is to guarantee one specific outcome: a weld joint that equals or exceeds the inherent strength of the base pipe itself. A failure in the joint means a failure in your parameters, your preparation, or your execution. Keep that high standard in mind as you review your calculations and head into your exams. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and best of luck with your continued IWE preparation.